How was that?
Very good, thanks. Thank you. We've been practicing all year, haven't we?
I can tell. No, I was quite impressed. Namashastam manamapi sachiputam ataswarupam rupam tasagrajamuриpurim maturim gosvatim Radha Kundam Girivaram Aho Radhika Madhvasam Prapto Yasya Patita Kripaya Sri Guru Tam Natosmi Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaye Tadale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namah. First of all, I offer my heart like flowers thousands and thousands of times at the feet of my supremely worshipable spiritual guru, Asmadeva Paramaradatam Guru Pada Padma, Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupad, Ashtotara Satsishima Drupanugacari Varya, Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. Secondly, I offer my pranam thousands of times at the lotus feet of my Guru's Guru and his teacher and his teacher and his teacher, going back thousands and thousands of years to the Vedic age. And finally, I offer my pranam, I bow down to each and every one of you. This afternoon, I thought we would do some thinking about thinking. Everyone thinks. No, I retract my words. Most people think. I think. Many people just go along in life without thinking. But thoughtful people think. They have questions. Huh? Oh. They have questions and they think about them. But what I want to do today is think about thinking itself. To see if we can ascertain whether or not this pursuit of trying to understand reality by our thought processes is a valid endeavor. Is reality something that can be understood or grasped by our conscious thinking capacity? This is the question. Human beings especially the educated ones, they pride themselves on being rational. And by their rationale and the empirical scientific approach, try to understand their environment. But if we think about thinking itself, we'll find that the rational approach to investigating reality is itself inherently irrational. Why? First of all, to be rational, to be logical, to be reasonable about something, we need something to be rational, reasonable and logical about. In other words, reason depends on some premises. If you study logic, then the first thing you'll learn is that there are some premises, and then you have to process them. In Indian logic, the example is given: you look in the distance and you see some smoke rising from a mountain, and so you conclude that there's smoke on the mountain, and I know that there's an invariable concomitance between the phenomenon of fire and smoke, and therefore, even though I cannot see any fire, because I can see smoke, therefore logically I conclude that there must be a fire on that mountain. So it's very reasonable. If you see smoke coming from the mountains, you think there's fire there. It's very reasonable. No one will disagree. However, to be reasonable, there have to be some premises to begin with, some given premises. And the first premises was that what you're seeing actually is smoke. Maybe it's mist. Maybe it's someone with a dry ice machine. Who knows? Right? What is it? So first of all, you have to have a given premise that it's smoke. Then you have another given premise in regard to the invariable concomitance of fire and smoke, where one is present, the other one is invariably present. Like this. So we have given premises. Starting with the given premises, then you can be rational, reasonable, logical. Now, we apply this to life. What are the given premises? What's the starting point?
It's birth.
Birth. You're born. That's the beginning. That's the beginning of your life. But if you want to analyze or understand or try to understand the world, be logical about it, you have to start with some known things. So I'm asking, what are the known things?
That life requires, you mean?
We will die. We will die.
Oh, this is the only thing, yeah, that you'll die. But even this isn't a known thing really, because what is death? And technically speaking, you will not die.
No.
Because you're the soul, and the soul doesn't die, you see. So it's very, very difficult to just start with one premise, let alone two, and add them together and come up with something logical. René Descartes, the French philosopher, he postulated that there are no given premises. There's no starting point for philosophy, except for one thing. I think, therefore I am. I'm thinking, so I must exist. It's the only thing that I know for sure, actually. But then other philosophers, they would postulate that actually, no. You feel to be one coherent, organized being. You appear to be of a unitary consciousness. But, for example, an atheistic scientist would say, no, there are just millions of chemical reactions going on in the brain, and consciousness is an emergent property of the brain. So this feeling that you are a unitary consciousness is an illusion brought about by the complexity of the electrochemical reactions in the brain, like that. And then others, for example, Buddhists and Shankarites, the Advaitavadis, they will say, no, actually everything is Brahman, and your feeling of being an individual is caused by an upadhi, a designation. Just as if you have a clay pot. Inside the clay pot there's some air, and outside the clay pot there's some air. So it seems that the air inside the clay pot is an individual piece of air, but if you smash the pot, then it becomes one with all the air around it. So, like this. And so, even the starting point of philosophy given by René Descartes, that I think therefore I am, even this can be struck down and invalidated, or at least questioned. No one can say it's a given premise. So when we think logically, we try to be rational. But what will you be rational about? Because we cannot identify any given premises for sure. Now, so this is the first fallacy. The first fallacy of thinking that we can understand and know things. It's the given premises fallacy. Now, why is it that we don't think about that? Why is it that most people didn't come to the conclusion that there are no given premises? You know, Socrates came to that conclusion. Socrates went around everywhere because he heard the words of the oracle. Socrates is the wisest man. Socrates was thinking, I'm the wisest man? How is that possible? Perhaps, have you read The Trial and Death of Socrates? Very interesting. So Socrates was, the oracle had said that Socrates is the wisest man, and Socrates was thinking, me? The wisest man? And then he thought, but the gods cannot tell a lie, so it must be true. So he decided to set off to prove that the gods must be right. Somehow he didn't know how to do it. So he was going to each man, and what I'm actually telling his history is his own history of his defense in court, because he was put on trial for subverting the youth of Athens and dishonoring the traditional gods. Of course, Socrates never did any of those things, but there was a playwright who had written a play called Clouds, and in that play there was a character called Socrates who did those things. And everyone used to go to the drama, and they thought that this character in the play, that's the real Socrates. So there was a confusion between the reality and entertainment. It was, you can see what a chaos it caused those days before television. And so now there's television and everything. Then the lines between reality and truth become even more blurred. So anyway, he was on trial for all these things that a fictional character called Socrates did in a drama. So, and everyone in Athens was upset with him. Why? He'd made a lot of enemies, because he made so many people look like fools. He approached them, and through discussion, that's called the Socratic Alenchus, a series of questions and answers. He questioned persons to ask them what do they know and what do they think is true. And each time they put forward an answer, he questioned that answer and questioned it until it came to the point where he revealed that everything that they were saying was just full of contradictions, and they didn't know anything. And so he went to the philosophers, he went to the doctors, he went to the politicians, to the poets, and he concluded. He said, I went to the poets and I asked them about their writing. And I tell you, if I ask any man in the street who's read their book, he would be able to explain their book better than the author himself. It was my experience, he said. Why? Because I have concluded that whatever genius we see, whatever skills a person has, whatever genius there is divinely inspired, and the individual is not responsible for it. Genius is a divine inspiration. So he went around here and there and questioned everyone, and so many people became angry when it was exposed that they actually deeply, if they examine all their ideas, they all fell apart and were full of contradictions and they knew nothing. And then Socrates, he realized, oh, now I understand why the words of the oracle are true. That Socrates is the wisest man. He said that it's a general rule. And the general rule is that if any man, like Socrates, knows that he doesn't know anything, he is the wisest man. Because all the people I have met, though they knew nothing, they thought that they knew something. And therefore they were in illusion. They were not wise. So in this way, Socrates established who is a wise person. The wise person is the person who, upon examining himself, comes to the conclusion, the deeply rooted conviction that I don't know anything. And that's called humility. So that's where the teaching of Jesus starts. Blessed are the meek. We just celebrated Christmas Day. So you see, Jesus Christ in one line has already come to the conclusion of thousands of years of philosophy. Blessed are the meek. First become humble. It's the beginning. So, when humility is lacking, that's when we fall into the whirlpool of confusion. And it starts with the given premises fallacy. The idea that first I know something. And now when I know something, now I can be reasonable about it. And come to my conclusions. So this given premises fallacy, it seems real. Our conclusions seem real. Our given premises seem real to us. Because that fallacy is standing on the foundation of another fallacy, which happens to be standing on the foundation of another one, and another one, and another one. And in this way we become wrapped up like a silkworm in a cocoon of so many fallacies that it's practically impossible to get out. So I want to look at each layer of bewilderment. We're speaking about the anatomy of illusion. So the first fallacy is the given premises fallacy, and it stands on the next fallacy, which is the fallacy of corresponding qualia. Qualia. Do you know qualia? Qualia is a philosophical term. It means the actual sensory experiences that we have are called qualia. And it's a philosophical term because in philosophy we can think that the way that we experience things may be different from the way the things actually are in and of themselves. You see? If you look at something, you see it. But is the thing that you're looking at, does it really look like that? Or does it just appear that way to you because of the nature of your senses? You know, actually many flowers, especially the flowers that have the most honey, the most nectar inside, they actually have ultraviolet markings. Right? And you can't see that. But when a bumblebee is flying and sees a field of flowers, some of them stand out with their ultraviolet markings, and the bee just goes to them. Now you can't do that, because when you look at the field of flowers doesn't appear in that way to you. So there's a difference between the object and your experience of the object. So the direct experience of things like redness or sweetness or pungentness or whatever, of a fragrance or whatever, the actual experience of what it is, that's called qualia in philosophy. Qualia. So the foundation upon which we think that there are some given premises is the idea that the way I am seeing things is actually the way that they are. And therefore it's given that flowers are whatever, a rose is red, or the sky is blue, and so on. These are given things, and we begin to logically postulate upon them because we think there are some given things. But this concept of given premises is based on another fallacy. that our experience of qualia corresponds with the objects that we're perceiving. The fallacy of corresponding qualia. Corresponding qualia does not only mean that we think that our senses truly represent what we're experiencing, but it also means that we have 5 senses and we think that there are only 5 categories of objects that can be experienced. Also, because our senses correspond in experience and also in number with the reality around us. But is that a fact? We don't even think about it. We just take it for granted. What I'm experiencing, seeing is believing. Yes, I can know, I can understand, I can dissect, investigate and examine the world. But there can be so many different senses that you don't have. For sensing so many things that you would have no idea about in the absence of that sense. For example, bats and birds, they have a sense that detects the electromagnetic field of the earth. If I put a blindfold on you and then turn you around and then say, okay, which way is north? What will you do? Nothing. You cannot do it. You have no clue. You have no clue. But bats and birds feel the electromagnetic field of the earth. Always. It's one of the senses they have. They just take it for granted. But they feel it in a different way. Bats can only experience the polarity, which is positive and which is negative. And birds, they can't experience the polarity at all. They only experience the angle of the electromagnetic field. Which is very interesting, because birds migrate. How did they're flying over the middle of the ocean, you can't see anything for 1,000 miles in any direction. How do they know which way to go? They can feel it. Because depending on where you are on the surface of the earth, then you see at the poles, the angle of the electromagnetic field is more steep, because it's like a donut, you know. If the earth was in the middle of the donut, then the field is like the round edges of the donut. So at the equator it's flat, and as you go closer to the north and south, the angle becomes more steep, like that. So they can tell where they're going from the angle. But bats, they don't know the angle. They can only feel which is positive and negative. So sometimes the polarity of the earth changes. So if a bat flies off in one direction, and then the polarity of the earth changes, the positive becomes negative and negative becomes positive, then the bat's confused and can't find his way home. But the birds can still find their way home, because they can't detect positive and negative. So even if the polarity changes, they can still exactly find their way, because it's by the angle of the field, not by the potential difference of the field. Like this. So these are strange things in nature. So our idea that some premises are given is based on our we just take it for granted. Corresponding qualia. My senses correspond in nature and also in number to the world around me. Then, only sensing things is not enough. Just to sense them is not enough. In order to understand them, we make abstractions. We make abstractions from the world. And that leads us to our next fallacy. The fallacy of comprehensive categories. We think in terms of categories. And we do it even inadvertently. What kind of categories? The first category of our thinking is identity and difference. That things are either the same or they're different. That's the first category. So the whole of Indian philosophy is, if you examine it, is all a discussion about this concept of identity and difference. Is everything one or is everything different? So, and when you come to the conclusion, you'll discover that it's neither one nor different. It's something else, but we don't have a category for that in our experience. So the first category is identity and difference, by which we identify whether things are the same or they're different. And then the next abstraction that we do from the world is the abstraction of number. If we identify that certain things are the same, then we can put them in a group. And we can put the different groups, and we count 1 group, 2, 3, 4, and the concept of number comes. You use numbers all the time. Have you ever seen a number? Can someone give me a number? What does number look like? It doesn't exist. It's a category in your mind that you use for calculations, which is based on extracting from your environment, based on your idea of things being either identical or different from each other. And in this way, we think very mathematically. Logic is very mathematical. So after identity, difference and number, then we have the points and lines of geometry. If you've studied maths or engineering and all of these things, then you make your calculations, triangles and squares and hexagons and stellated icosahedras and all these things, right? So this geometry is all about the relationships between points and lines. But what is a point? A point is something which occupies no space. That's the technical definition of a point. So there isn't anything that occupies no space. What's a line? A line is the shortest distance between 2 points. A line has length, but it has no width, technically. So there's no such thing as a line. So we think in terms of points and lines and the angles between them and all of these things. And these are the categories by which we understand the world. Another category is time, past, present and future. This is our category, our experience. Now science has shown that when you go to different planets, depending on the mass of the planet and the gravity there, then time is also relative. So if you go to a planet with a bigger gravity for a small amount of time, when you return to Earth, then thousands of years have passed. You can even do this now with if you have 2 stopwatches and you start them, and you take the one to the top of the tallest building in the world, keep it there for some time. When you come down, they'll have a different time, because the further away you get from the surface of the planet, the gravitational field becomes less. Understand? So this is called relativity. So even our concept, our category of time, past, present and future, is not an absolute thing. This is theory of relativity. You see? So we think in terms of categories: identity, difference, number, time, things being solid and things being spacious, liquid, gases, and so on. This is all relative also, because if you were to become minuscule, atomic in size, then you would see that this solid thing is 99.99% space. There's practically nothing solid there at all. Only the forces between the molecules repel each other, and the forces between the molecule in your hands repel each other, and therefore your hand cannot pass through it. So we have all these categories, which are also the production of our own mind, and we think with these categories. But if there were some object, if there were some aspect of existence which did not conform to the categories that we're familiar with, then we would not even have any ability to think about it, because we think in categories. Understand? The first thing we do is we see something, and then we extract categories, and then we manipulate them, we process them in our mind in order to understand. But if there were something beyond our senses or outside of the categories that we're familiar with, we would not even have the machinery, if you like, to think about it. So everything about transcendence, everything about God is beyond our senses and outside of our categories. So the attempt to understand God by our thinking is just quite absurd. Now, but still we do it. We do it. So our given premises, our corresponding qualia, our idea, the fallacy of comprehensive categories, that the categories with which I think are comprehensive, they cover all possible categories. And therefore I can know something. So this is one fallacy inside another, inside another, inside another. So then the next category of fallacy is the Oh, I want to give an example first before I move on of the comprehensive categories. Imagine that you live in two-dimensional space. You live in a plane of two dimensions, like a piece of paper. Your existence is flat, a piece of paper. And you and all the people you know and everything you know is two-dimensional. One day, a three-dimensional object, a ball, passed through your world. Passed through your world completely. How would you experience that? You live in two dimensions.
You experience it in two dimensions.
So how would you experience that ball?
Flat.
Flat. Okay, you've got a part of it. Now think a little bit more.
Well, a two-dimensional perspective,
Uh-huh.
not a three-dimensional perspective.
So how would you experience it?
Circle.
You wouldn't understand it.
Yeah.
Now you said a circle.
Like a circle. Yeah.
Like a circle. The ball is passing through your plane.
Like a spot.
Aha! Like a spot and then like a circle.
Yeah.
In other words, as the ball passes, first it didn't exist. And as it touches your plane, you see a spot, which grows
To a circle.
into a big circle. It's kind of born, if you like. And then it grows, and then it becomes old and shrinks and dies. Right? It was neither born, it never grew, it never shrunk, and it never died. But from your perspective, it did. Understand? You see? So, because you have, living in the plane of two dimensions, you have no categories to think about what is three-dimensional. Therefore, on the basis of your perception, you can very positively and confidently say, I know what a ball is. It is something which is born, grows, shrinks, and dies. When actually all of those things are completely untrue. But you will say it with confidence. Because that's your perspective. And you have no way of knowing what that truth is, because it exists in a category which is beyond your experience. Yet still, we hold within ourselves the fallacy of comprehensive categories, that the categories with which I am accustomed is a comprehensive inventory of all possible categories. And therefore it's possible for me to know something or everything. I'm trying to help us go deeply, examine ourselves in order to uproot our vanity in regard to knowledge. Thomas A. Kempis said, all is vanity, all is vanity, all is vanity. What does that mean? I don't claim to know, but we're trying to shed a little light on some aspect of what he's saying. All is vanity, all is vanity. That vanity is so deep that we think, but because we're not thinking about thinking, we cannot identify that vanity within ourselves. So, moving on from the fallacy of comprehensive categories, we'll move to the next level of our bewilderment. That is the fallacy of universal applicability. If I have an experience, then I can apply this experience in other circumstances, and it will be valid. Mm. And it will be valid. So, just like people say, oh, someone may challenge. You say God has created everything. Yes, yes. Okay, then who created God? People think this is a really intelligent philosophical question. If God created everything, but who created God? Now I have stumped you. No, because we exist within time. So, if God has created everything, then one of the things He's created is time. And since time is His creation, He must be beyond and outside of time. And since He's outside of time, there's no question of His own creation, His own being created. Because there's no, to be created, you have to exist within time, not outside of it. Like this. So we have our experiences, and then we project them onto things which are beyond our experience, but still feel confident that they'll be valid there. It's absurd. I'll give another mathematical example. You know that if there's a triangle, and you know two of the angles in that triangle, for sure what they are, then how can you know what the third angle is? Without measuring it.
It's up to 180.
That's right, yeah. Because the angles in the triangle always add up to 180 degrees. If two of the angles are 45, then the third angle will be 90. For sure. Every time you, any triangle, any shape of triangle you want to draw, if you know two of the angles, the third one you can know just by subtracting the first two angles from 180, that will be. This is very basic geometry. So this is a rule. Right? If you draw any triangle, you can calculate what the third angle is. Correct? Yeah. We've all agreed on that, except for me. I don't agree.
Only in this space. If we change the time and space, it's not, isn't it?
Even in this space, if you will draw a triangle on a football, the angles will add up to more than 180. Because it's only applicable, yes, in 2 dimensions. You introduce one more dimension, all the rules change. So these are simple examples to show, just to illustrate how we just add one extra thing that we didn't know about. Something that was outside of our experience. And all the rules change completely. But we don't consider it. When people think about God, they try to conceive of God in terms of their own experience. And so this is called the fallacy of universal applicability. That we think that our experience is universally applicable. The fallacies don't end there. There are more. Next one is the fallacy of causal closure. Causal closure. It is the causal closure which gives us the impression that we understand something or we have some knowledge. I'll give an example. If you take a pebble and you throw the pebble to a kitten, you throw the pebble to the kitten and the pebble bounces and then it's spinning around, then the kitten will look at the pebble and be transfixed and watch it spinning until it stops. And then when it stops, the kitten will still watch and think, what is this pebble going to do next? That his consciousness is like boom, 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 boom. And he's looking. What will he do next? If you throw a pebble to a dog, the dog won't even look where the pebble went. The dog will look up and say, who threw that pebble at me? Because the consciousness of the dog is somewhat more evolved than the consciousness of animal psychology class now. So the consciousness of animals are on different levels, And according to our level of consciousness, we see effects. And the deeper our consciousness is, the more we see that effect, behind it is a cause, and behind that is another cause, and behind that another cause. And so, the cat is watching the object and thinking this object is itself an effect with its own independent cause. Whereas the dog sees the pebble coming and then thinks, who threw that pebble at me? Because the motion of the stone, in his consciousness he thinks, someone has done this. The effect has a cause, and his mind goes to the cause, like this. So all of us, in everyday life, from moment to moment, we see things, and we think about what the cause of it will be. But there's a certain point where we cut off, even though we have not arrived at the ultimate cause yet. And that point where we cut off, we take that to be knowledge and share it with others. Even though we haven't come to the end of the chain, the links of causation. In the beginning of Vedanta Sutra, it begins with the discussion of causation. Janmadyasya yataha. The supreme truth is that from which everything has emanated. I'm not speaking some abstruse philosophical points here. This is functioning at every moment in our life. For example, a person's thinking, I'm suffering. Why? Because I have to work so hard. Why? Because I have to because I have to pay so many taxes. And why do you have to pay so many taxes? Because the government are bad. How can we solve this problem? Well, we'll vote for another government or something like this. Then another person is thinking, oh, I'm suffering because I have to work so hard. Because I have to pay so many taxes. We come back to the beginning of the class now. He said, what is for certain? So there's a famous one. Yeah. Only two things are certain: death and taxes, right? So I have to pay so many taxes because the government are this and that and they're corrupt, but I'm not going to vote because it's a waste of time voting. Because both parties who you vote for, they're both, all their campaigns are paid for by the same group of bankers. Like that, and then someone will see behind this there's another reason why nothing is working out, because behind that cause there's another cause. And then someone says, so there's a big bank like Goldman Sachs and they've paid the campaign of both parties, like that, to give the illusion of democracy. See, that's what's going on. So then a person, so the cause is, it's those evil bankers or whatever, and then someone will go for and then they'll direct their energy fighting that cause. Each person fights the cause where they've made the closure. You see? Wherever their mind is closed, their life is directed towards fighting that. So go further. In the Vedic culture, there are actually 6 classical Vedic philosophies. Perhaps you know. I know Vera studied all of these things. So in India, there are 6 schools of philosophy. They're called the classic philosophies of the Vedas. Nyaya, Vaisheshik, Sankhya, Yoga, and Purva Mimamsa and Vedanta. So Nyaya means the logic, the school of logic from the Rishi called Gautam Rishi. And then Vaisheshik is the Vedic atomic theory, which traces the cause back to, the cause of everything is atoms. And then you have Sankhya. Atoms, they're not independent. Atoms are Prakriti, and Prakriti, the energy doesn't work without a Purush. The energy is inert. There must be something that inspires that energy, the Purush. So you have Prakriti and Purush. Then that becomes Sankhya philosophy. And then Patanjali comes along with his Yoga Sutras and says, hey, no, don't. It doesn't stop there. You can't just discriminate philosophically between Prakriti and Purush and detach them from each other to get liberation. It doesn't work like that. You have to actually practically take your consciousness out of its entanglement with Prakriti. The Purush should be free from Prakriti. Purushata sunyanam gunanam pratiprashravam kaivalya swarupa pratistim chitir shaktir vaiti vachitir shaktir iti. The very last sutra of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. So when you look at philosophy is essentially the difference between an ordinary person and a philosopher is only this. The ordinary person makes the causal closure at the end of his nose, more or less. He says, oh, this is the problem, and fights with that. And then someone else is, no, that's not the problem. There's a cause behind that. And they go, and then they fight with that. And the philosopher is the person who tries to go beyond that cause, beyond that, and try to find the ultimate cause. The problem is that as you chase the chain of cause and effect, they become more and more subtle until they slip through the net of your senses. They become so fine that you can no longer experience what the next cause is. And now it's out of your reach. If you like, your arm isn't long enough to get there anymore, because the causes are becoming more and more subtle. Just like Buddha said, the cause of your suffering is what? Desire. Okay.
An attachment.
Desire. Okay. So then the question comes, okay, that's a great idea. But now, where do desires come from?
Past experiences.
Where do desires come from?
Past
Yes, you're correct. But the common person doesn't know. Because the past experiences are stored in the chitta or in the subconscious. And you are not conscious of that. That's why it's the subconscious. You're not conscious of it. There's a conscious area of your mind. You're aware of that. But there's a subconscious. That is a chitta. And that chitta, in Sanskrit it's called chitta or chetas. So this chetas, it stores up all your past experiences. But because for the general person, their consciousness is dark, all those past experiences are stored in an area of the chitta which is dark. They can't see it. Now what happens is, due to stimulation of circumstances, some impressions which are in the subconscious, that's called sanskar. Sanskar means impressions. They're stored in the unconscious. And some situation will awaken a sanskar, an impression from the chitta, and it will pass from the subconscious mind into the conscious mind. And so when that happens, when the impression of an activity you have done, usually in a previous life, enters your conscious mind from the subconscious, at that time you say, hey, I had a great idea. And you think you've just had an idea. Another illusion here. The illusion of choice, the illusion of independence, the illusion of freedom. In this, well, I'm free to choose and do whatever I like. What will you do? I don't know, I haven't decided yet. I'm going to decide now. Okay, I just had an idea. It doesn't work like that. It only appears to work like that. Because there's a dark area of your consciousness which is filled with all the impressions of past activities that you're not aware of. And circumstances stimulate one to come into the conscious mind and say, I had an idea. You see? And that's how karma works. Because the activities that you've done in the past are stored as impressions, and then gradually these impressions come up one by one, and you relive them. And that's the reactions of your karma. That's karma. That's how karma works. This is also the difference between an ordinary person and an enlightened person. An enlightened person is a person in whose chitta there are no dark areas. Because there's a dark area in your chitta, there are so many things hiding there that you cannot see, which are going on, and which dictate to you every day what you should do.
So, good choices are good past experiences.
Yes. If you've been religious, if you've been spiritual, if you've been religious in the past, you'll tend to do that, to go on like that. And as you perform spiritual activities again and again, they accumulate more and more until all your activities become of a pious, religious, or moral or ethical nature. And so similarly, sinful activities, if you do something sinful, then that goes into the chitta and that accumulates, and your life gradually becomes more and more dark, more and more tamasic in the lower energy, you see, and more sattvic activities. Even if you do them by force, you have to have discipline. Wrong ideas are coming in your mind, forget them. Don't follow them. It's not you. It's not your idea, it's not your desire. Just be detached from it. Be objective. Stand separate from those thought streams. in the mind. This is what Krishna explains in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. Apuryamanam machala pratistam samudramapa pravisanti yadvat tadyat karmavan pravishanti yad sarve sashantim apnoti nakamakami. It means, just as many rivers flow into the ocean, but the ocean remains, because it's deep, it remains unchanged. So similarly, the person into whose mind the rivers of many thoughts and desires flow, but he does not act upon them, that person can attain peace, and not the person who is chasing after every thought that pops into his head. Chapter 2, verse 72, Bhagavad Gita. Yeah? Brilliant wisdom, you see? And because those thoughts which are coming in your mind are actually your karma, when you act on them, you are perpetuating the cycle of karma, and when you don't, you're becoming free from your karma.
Do you find that easy, though, with all those thoughts?
No.
And that question is aimed at me? Well, that's why I'm talking about the difference between an ordinary person and an enlightened person. Because the ordinary person, those desires are coming from a dark part of the consciousness that they're not aware of. An enlightened person is a person who doesn't have any dark parts in their consciousness. And that's why they speak with great confidence about reincarnation and all of these things. Because when your consciousness becomes illuminated, you can look inside and you can see your sanskars from all the previous lives. And on the basis of that, you know your past lives, where you've been and what has led you to today. And because the future is an echo of the past, you also know what the future lives will be as well. And if you are completely free from the urges of those impressions, then there won't be any future life. One will become liberated. And when the consciousness becomes very much enlightened, then when you see another person, you can also see their chitta and see their sanskars and where they are in this life and their previous lives also. So this is what it means to be enlightened, that there are no dark patches in the chitta. When the chitta, the internal organ, a part of it becomes darkened, then that darkness, that collected mass of impressions that we're not conscious of, that is called ahankar or ego. That is the ego. And so from the ego is the repository of all vasanas, all desires, and the emanating.
Could you elucidate the difference in between samskara and vasana?
Yes. The sanskar is the impression in the chitta.
Yeah.
And when that impression is raised into the conscious mind, now it's a desire.
Yeah. Okay.
A vasana is like a sanskar in action. Because, as Patanjali mentions about, desires can be attenuated.
Attenuated.
Yes, like this. So, like that.
Okay.
So,
Thanks.
this is a great science. Just as you look around, you can look into the garden and say, oh, there's a palm tree and there's an oak tree and there's a rhododendron bush. So in the same way, by the daily practice of sadhana, of a yoga system, and especially of bhakti yoga, which is the supreme and mature, most developed form of all the yoga systems, then just as you are seeing the objects, you can see all the internal workings of it's not you, you're the soul, of your subtle body and your mind. You can see everything. And when the chitta becomes even more pure, then you can see the spiritual world and God. So this is directly described in the Rig Veda. Om Tad Vishno Paramam Padam Sada Pasyanti Surayo Diviva Chakshuratatam. Just give me a minute to recover from that.
Yeah.
Here Rig Veda is saying that the Suraya means those saints who are devoted, those who have devotion. Just as clearly as you see the sun in the sky with your naked eye, as clearly they see the spiritual sky, which is the supreme abode of Vishnu. Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam. So in this life, you can see the kingdom of God and see God. It's not a question of how intellectual you are. It's a function of purity of consciousness. So we're looking at the different levels of consciousness. From the cat, who does causal closure on what's right there in front of him, the pebble. And then the dog, he sees past the pebble into the person who threw it. And then the human being who sees, well, actually the cause of the problem is the government. And then someone else sees past that and says it's the bankers. And then the Buddhists see past that and say, well, actually it's desire. And so on. And so you have to go. What is the ultimate cause? Janmadhyasya yata. But the cause of everything, as we're discussing, it's beyond our range of perception at the moment. But our powers of perception can be heightened to the point, as Rig Veda gives the conclusion, Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam, that you can see the cause of all causes is God, in His very beautiful, astonishing, eternal abode. And the reason we're undergoing the material experience is only due to our indifference to the loving service of God. And when we become situated in our nature once again of the constant, spontaneous, unconditional loving service to God, then our memory, our vision, everything becomes fully restored. And all the levels of causation we can trace back to, oh, it's you. Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Krishna. This is your language. Sanskrit is your language. Sanskrit is the mother language of all of us. If you have a female child, she is your daughter. Oh, you can speak Sanskrit. Brilliant.
It's about the limit of us, isn't it?
The Sanskrit word for daughter is duhitra.
Okay.
D-U-H-I-T-R-A. Duhitra. Duhitra. Daughter.
Cow was similar too, isn't it? The word cow?
Gao.
Cow.
Gao.
Yeah.
Like a G becomes a K.
Yeah.
Gao. So your daughter is called Duhitra. Daughter. Mother is Mata. And many words in English, most of the words are derived from Latin and Greek. And if you trace back the Latin and the Greek, you will come to Sanskrit.
Slavic languages are close, isn't it?
Yes. Russian
and
Lithuanian.
Czech,
Yes, they're even closer to Sanskrit. There are many words. The word for man is Manu. And it's funny, if you ask someone a question, sometimes they say They don't say yes, they say Naturally we say right? Everyone's saying So the word for yes in Sanskrit is Om also means yes. Om. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. Amen. So be it. Yes, affirmative. Om. So our words, they're all coming from Sanskrit. Is there a word that means, and I'm quoting the Oxford English Dictionary, is there a word that means compelling attractiveness that inspires devotion?
Krishna.
English Dictionary. Is there an English word that means, here's the first definition, compelling attractiveness that inspires devotion. The second definition, possessed of divine talent. From the Greek word meaning grace and power.
God. Or Christ.
Charisma.
Oh,
Charisma.
The word charisma means charisma. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. The word charisma means compelling attractiveness that inspires devotion. That's what the word Krishna means in Sanskrit. Krish means attractiveness. And Na means ananda or joy, which is the essence of devotion. So the combination of Krish and Na in Sanskrit makes the word Krishna, which has become charisma, which means compelling attraction that inspires devotion. So when we are speaking in Sanskrit or chanting Hare Krishna, this is, you own it. This is your language. This is your mother language. I'm not importing something foreign for you. This is yours. So we're discussing about the fallacies that make us think that we know something. Yes. So we come to the one called, what was the last one? Causal closure. That we look at an effect and we find its cause and say, I know, now I know this. And then we're engaged in a struggle against whatever we see to be the cause. And when we're successful, we share that knowledge with others and we call it knowledge. But until we come to the final cause, we're like that cat looking at the pebble. All the people who are trying to counteract the problems of life by economic and political solutions are the cat looking at the pebble. Because this is not the cause of their problem. The cause of their problem is, then someone, it's your karma, your actions. But karma is also not independent. Who has made this law of karma, how it works, and so on? And why are we engaged in karmas? The ultimate cause is the absence, our ignorance, our obliviousness to God, and our constitutional position of being servants of God. So as soon as we engage in bhakti, and bhakti begins by hearing the divine vibration emanating from the spiritual world, Krishna, and coming to this world in the Vedic culture, through the Greek culture, through the Greek charis, and Latin, and to English, charisma. Everyone is attracted to who has charisma. Like this. So, causal closure. The next fallacy. Even though all of our thinking is riddled, completely riddled with holes and fallacies and the delusion, still, we don't give it up. We don't stop. We still maintain and feel that we have the capacity to know and understand things. Which leads us to the next fallacy, that is the entitlement fallacy. Even though I have all of these shortcomings, and it's, technically speaking, if we consider it carefully as we are being doing today, I have no way of understanding anything. But still, I will not admit this to myself. Why? I am entitled to know. So, we come back to Socrates. Socrates was wise because he knew, I don't know anything. Why am I entitled? Why do I have to be entitled to know anything? What have I done? What is my merit? What is my capacity? We are tiny, insignificant creatures who are born and die in the blink of an eye. Disappear into oblivion. 100 years from now, no one will know your name or anything that you did. We have to consider our own insignificance. Here we are, sitting on this rock, the third stone from the sun, as they say, in an endless universe, and that universe itself is only one among millions of countless universes. We're very, very insignificant. But we feel entitled. No. I'm entitled to know everything. And this entitlement fallacy is standing on one thing only: pride. Pride. So you see, as soon as pride is there, then the entitlement feeling comes. I am entitled to know. And then causal closure. And the universal applicability. Another fallacy is the fallacy of impartial methodology. We think that I will analyze everything very objectively and impartially. And by the objective and impartial analysis, we can find what is true. Because logic has no face. Logic is not emotional. It's not sentimental. Logic is not dogmatic. It is impartial and dispassionate. And by this we can know. No, this idea itself is dogmatic. The very idea that logic is an impartial methodology itself is partial and is a dogma. Why? Because it has built into it a premise that reality is not a person. You see, things which are objects, you can know them by examination. But a person you can never know unless they reveal themselves to you. You cannot dissect a person's brain and find out what he's thinking, how he feels, what his secrets are. You can only know a person when a person reveals himself to you. So since reality itself has personality, is personal, God is that reality, then he can only be known when he reveals himself. And our logical approach, the very idea that we can understand reality by so-called impartial logic itself is partial, because it's already packed within it the concept that reality has no personality. So it's like an offense. From the very beginning it's offensive to reality. If we all talk about you, you're sitting there, we all talk about you in the third person as if you're not here, right? You'll feel uncomfortable. It's offensive actually, like that. So it's like that, impersonalism, you see. So this, as soon as pride is there, then one falls into this, they're like matryoshka dolls. You know matryoshkas? Fallacy inside a fallacy, inside a fallacy, inside a fallacy, inside. And because all these fallacies depend on each other, once you're in the middle, you cannot get out. You cannot even see it, you become lost. Because the fallacies around the other fallacies guarantee that it makes sense. You see, because we've been talking about thinking about thinking. So now I just want to speak a little bit about, not about meaning, but the meaning of meaning. What does people think about the meaning of life? What does meaning mean? Meaning is a relationship between some object, a content, something which has content, and its context. This is meaning. Meaning is a relationship between content and context. Let's just take a word. Good. What does good mean?
Good.
Good?
It's all perception.
Good means good. Okay, now we're going to have a meal, but goodbye. Is good?
No.
You see, here's the word good. The word good inherently has some kind of meaning, but truly its meaning only comes out in its context. If you put the word goodbye next to it, then is goodbye good? Huh? You have a neighbor, he's playing loud music all the time, but the police take him away. Goodbye. Huh? So at first you thought good was good, but then good wasn't good. When I said it was goodbye because it's time for prasadam, then it was bad. But if you put the word goodbye in another context with the neighbor playing the loud music, then goodbye becomes good. So first it was good, then it was bad, and then it was good. What is it? It depends on the context. So the meaning of a word depends on the context, where it is in the sentence, where the sentence is on the page, where the page is in the book, like this. And so the meaning of anything depends on its context, and the context of that depends on the context of that, and depends on the context of that, depends on the context of that. And therefore the conclusion is that you cannot understand the meaning of any one thing unless you understand everything. Because everything is the context of any one thing. Understand?
We know nothing.
Ah, yes. Yes. I'm very happy. So, this is why Socrates, he said, now I understand why the oracle was true. Because if a person knows that, if a person like Socrates knows that he knows nothing, he's wise. He's the wisest person. Like this. But it's not good enough to just say, I don't know anything. Deeply you have to understand why. The whys and wherefores of why you don't know anything and you cannot know anything. All of this. So this is what we're discussing today. And so, once one is proud, then the entitlement fallacy comes, the causal closure fallacy comes, within that the impartial methodology fallacy comes, within that the universal applicability, the comprehensive categories, the corresponding qualia, and the fallacy of the given premises, and on the basis of all that stands the edifice of modern society, reason, standing on the top of the mountain of thousands of fallacies, all around. And that's why in the Vedic society we don't go that route. That's why in spiritual life we start at the beginning, humility. Blessed are the meek. So Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita, if you want to know something, tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. Just try to know the truth by approaching a spiritual master. That's in Sanskrit called tattvadarshi, one who has seen the truth, one who has seen reality. Approach the spiritual master in a humble mood by bowing down. Be very submissive and render service. And by humility, submission and service, the heart becomes qualified for pariprashnena, to ask questions. Until a person becomes humble and realizes that the depth of their own ignorance, they're not qualified to ask questions because they will not understand any of the answers. Yeah? Because as soon as the guru, the spiritual master, the enlightened person speaks, then he has a realization. He's seeing the spiritual world. And that description comes from his lips. And then those words go into the ear of the person whose heart has not been prepared. And then it begins to mix with all their mundane ideas. And it becomes filtered through the mundane ideas. And by the time it reaches their soul, it's a totally different thing to what the spiritual master originally intended to say. And therefore, the spiritual education is unlike the mundane or empiric education, which is basically just sharing data with other people who are on the same page. But rather, the imparting spiritual knowledge is a very delicate process, which requires humility, submission, service, and humble inquiry, and gradually, and also a daily practice. Because by following the daily practice, what happens? The dark areas in the chitta, they slowly become enlightened. And then gradually, the words the spiritual master is saying, they become internally realized as a direct experience. Like this. So this is the process to know the supreme truth, which is compelling attractiveness that inspires devotion. Charisma. Krishna. Is it okay? Yes? So today we did some thinking about thinking. And with those words, I put my discourse to rest. Good night. See you tomorrow. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's no way you could follow what I said from me being in the kitchen. required one pointed attention.
And all of it.
I was seeing everyone was very focused and concentrated. So,
That's what they say. The Hermetics say that the lips are closed until the ears can hear. Until there are ears that can hear.
yes, bhakti, there are 64 different practices of bhakti, but it begins with shravanam, hearing. Shravanam. Everything starts with hearing. Because we have acquired our orientation by which we navigate through life by hearing. There are many things that we don't see, that we cannot experience directly, but there are concepts that we've learned in our education, and we use them to navigate through life. And by and large, they're all completely wrong.
We even hear things, and then we hear it 5 times, and only 5th time we say ah. Then we hear it 10 times, and then it's another aha.
Because it's a function of purity of consciousness. As the consciousness becomes pure, then we get a more increasingly accurate experience of reality.
Yes.
And when the consciousness is completely pure, then we get the pure experience of reality as it is. So that is called in Sanskrit tattva. Tat means that. And tva is like a suffix, like the English ness. You have happy and happiness, cold and coldness. So tva in Sanskrit is like, so tattva, thatness. Someone who knows tattva, the thatness, what it is like. So there are different tattvas. There are the mahat tattva, that is this material world. And the tattvas, the categories in this world are earth, water, fire, air, space. They're each one becoming finer than the other. Space. And then manas, mind. And then buddhi, intelligence. And then ahankar, ego. And then chitta, the pure chitta, beyond that. And then the next tattva after that is you, the soul. But the soul is covered by the chitta, and the darkened chitta is the ahankar, and then the portions of the ahankar become the intelligence and the mind and so on. And then you have the gross physical body. So these are the nine coverings of the soul. And the general person is just completely preoccupied with basically the earth, water, fire and air, the physical body, and what it will do.
Some hermetics put that Akashic principle is kind of more relevant to God. What do you think?
That is their causal closure.
I was thinking about that a lot, and I thought, well, that sounds strange. No,
that is the point where they close. This is different. Just as birds fly, each type of bird can only fly so high in the sky. So different philosophers and persons of wisdom, depending on how much sattva they have, they can go higher into the causes, depending on how much sattva they have. But bhakti is not of tamas, rajas or of sattva. Bhakti is nirgun. And therefore in Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna said,
Gunatita,
yes, gunatit. Yeah, that's exactly what Krishna said. Mamcho yavya bicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunam samatityaitam. Guna samatit. Not gunatit, guna samatit. Sama completely. Sagunan samatityaitam brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Because the nature of bhakti itself is nirgun. When you engage in devotional service, bhakti yoga, even if you don't understand anything, it doesn't matter, just go on. And because bhakti itself by nature is nirgun, and you'll be lifted beyond the gunas and have the direct experience. So it said bhakti is like Jariyati asuya kosham nirginam analayata. Like digestion. When you eat food, then you don't sit down and say, okay, now I'm going to digest the carbs. And now the proteins. And no, you don't think about digestion. It just happens by itself. So in the same way, when you engage in the activities of bhakti yoga, hearing, chanting, remembering, and so on, then it begins to digest your shukshma sharira, the subtle body. The mind, the intelligence and ego are digested while you're engaging in bhakti yoga. without even knowing it. And one day you'll see how they've been fully digested. And then you are Mukta Purush, liberated. Even though your body is in this world, you are like one astronaut. You can sit and meditate and go to the other planets and beyond the material universe to the spiritual world. And then come back. And then you can tell others what it was like.
Do you think that the enlightenment is gradual process? Like, I think that lots of people have like glimpses. Maybe?
It's gradual. It's a very, very gradual process. And when a person has a glimpse, this is like what psychologists would call a peak experience. But it's unsteady.
Unsteady, yeah.
And the peak is relative enlightenment to where they are then, but not fully. So it has some value because it awakens inquisitiveness and some determination to find out more. But in the process of bhakti there are stages. And so the stages begin Shraddha, faith, or the initial desire to serve. That's the beginning. And then one associates with sadhus, with holy men. And then one takes up a process that's called bhajana kriya, the actual practice every day. And by doing this then anartha nivritti means the unwanted coverings of the consciousness, the dirt within the consciousness starts to be cleansed away. And during that process there'll be moments of illumination and then moments of, it's called anishtita, unsteady. So that's it. So those are the glimpses. But if that goes on, once the chitta has become cleansed sufficiently, perhaps 75% clean, then nishta comes. That means steadiness. So in the stage of nishta, steadiness, there's none of these ups and downs of glimpses and things appearing and disappearing. It's a steady realization. And then after that comes the stage of ruchi, which means taste. So in taste means that you're experiencing something, that you begin to experience the form of Krishna, the qualities of Krishna, the associates also. These realizations you begin to experience them, and this taste is so sweet, so delicious, so astonishing, that you lose taste in all other things. And then that deepens, becomes asakti bhava. Then in the stage of bhava, your spiritual body comes. You realize your soul's eternal, transcendental, unchangeable identity. That is who you are. So these are the stages. So that what you're talking about, the glimpses, that's the pre-nishta, the pre-steadiness stage, where there's unsteady, the consciousness is unsteady.
So it would not be like nirbija samadhi, or that doesn't have anything to do. That because bhakti goes beyond.
Yes. But if the person is in nirbij samadhi, it's really nirbij, they will stay there. They will not fluctuate. Because they've already gone through the stages of mudha, shipta, vikshipta,
Yes.
and then ekagrata. So now they've come to nirodha. So already in ekagrata, they are pretty ekagra, one-pointed. They are fixed. Though they may go in and out of their stage of ekagrata. But once they attain nirodha, even when they open their eyes, they're still in the stage of nirodha. That becomes called sahaj samadhi, natural samadhi. You see, at first you have to do your meditation to attain some glimpse of what it's like ekagrata, and then you go through 4 stages of the savitak samadhi and nirvitak samadhi, then savichar samadhi and nirvichar samadhi, and then the asampragyata samadhi will come, like this. So when you're going through those stages, you may go in and out, but once the asampragyata samadhi comes, then there's no longer any obstacle or disturbance. So the person will stay there. And bhakti produces, the bhakti samadhi is beyond that. The asampragyata samadhi is a freedom from the negative from the negative things. And but to accept the positive, association with bhaktas is necessary. So some persons, they define the Kaivalya Swarupa Pratishta as this emptiness of the asampragyata samadhi. But it cannot be. Why? Because the Kaivalya Swarupa Pratishta, Kaivalya means exclusive. Exclusive, not mixed with anything else, not mixed with the effect of the gunas. So it's Kaivalya. That means in this world there's a mixture of two things, the spirit, Purusha and Prakriti, the spirit and the body. But Kaivalya means only spirit, pure spirit. Kaivalya Swarupa Pratishta Va Chiti Shakti Iti. Chiti Shakti. So in that state, the soul is Shakti. Shakti. Shakti means energy.
Yeah, I know, but how? I don't understand that. How?
Yes. So just see. Earlier, Patanjali in the sutras said that there is Ishvara is Vishesh Purush.
Yes.
He's a special person who is not affected by karma or time or anything. He's always transcendental. Even he says that Ishvara is the guru of the ancients. He's the guru of the past liberated masters. Which means that when they were liberated, that the masters who were liberated did not lose their individuality. Because he's still the teacher of the masters who were liberated. Which means that everyone who was liberated is still an individual and he's still their master. He's still their guru, Purush. So, for Shakti, in the state of liberation, Shakti exists. And in the state of liberation, the Purush, Vishesh Purush, Ishvara exists. So Patanjali's conclusion is that you become situated in your Swarup, your eternal spiritual form, and you are Shakti. And the function of Shakti is to serve the Purush. Shakti means Prakriti. Purush and Prakriti. So the deep conclusion of Patanjali is Bhakti. And this is why very early on in actually the first pada, he says that Samadhi Siddhi Ishvara Pranidhanat, that the perfection of Samadhi comes just by surrendering to Ishvara, surrendering to God, even without doing any yoga. Because Ishvara Pranidhan is the one of the niyams.
One of the niyamas.
It's one of the niyams. So after the niyams, you have to do asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyan and samadhi. But here he's saying, only from this niyam, by this niyam, you can get samadhi. And this is why some of the commentators on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras who came late, not his direct disciple Vyas, he wrote the most famous commentary, the Vyasa Bhasya, but later commentators, they said Patanjali has made a mistake. Some said Patanjali has made a mistake. How is it that by surrender to God, without doing all yoga, you can get samadhi? He must have made a mistake. And others say, perhaps this sutra is an interpolation, that someone added it. But we know this is not true, because Patanjali's direct disciple Vyas has written a commentary. And he said, the meaning of Ishvara Pranidhan is Vishesh Bhakti, intense devotion. That's in the Vyasa Bhasya. So Patanjali, he knows everything. He knows everything. He's a devotee. But for persons who have a leaning towards the yogic life and mystic powers and these kinds of things, he's written something which can fulfill their desire, which is coming in their mind from their past sanskars. They think it's their desire. In one hand, they can fulfill that desire in a safe way and also come in contact with the importance of Bhakti Yoga. So I'm sorry if you didn't follow any of that, but it's a little technical discussion for the students of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and the Sanskrit explanation and commentaries also that come
So we can take
from
a shortcut.
his disciple. Yes, that's what Bhakti is. Yeah, you don't have to, that's what Bhakti is about. You don't have to do all the asanas and the breathing and sit in a cave alone for 100 years in the Himalayas. You can just be in your home and chant every day nicely, associate with the pure saints, do kirtan, offer your food, take prasadam, and gradually, all the benefits of yoga that will come by the internal digestion of the ego is going on. But it's going on a very deep level. And so the tendency is in the beginning, someone say, I chanted, I was singing, I took some prasadam, but I kind of feel the same, So people want something that they can feel right now. And if there's an advanced devotee, if you do kirtan with an advanced devotee, you can feel something right there and then. It's very powerful. But perhaps when you're practicing on your own, you will not feel the experience of bhakti so acutely. So the tendency is in the beginning to then think, I'll do a little bit or something like that, not to take it so seriously. So that's why all the Vedas say sadhu sangha. You must associate with saints, because the more we associate with saints who are already there, they inspire us and they infuse us and they enthuse us with more energy to apply ourselves more. And because the changes are going on a very deep level, and it will take some time, but after some time, then you'll see everything will open. The chitta will completely open, and everything that was as advertised, all the things I have told you,
Do you think
about Krishna and his world and everything, you'll see everything directly.
to lose things like the pride, ego, desire, can you just do that through bhakti, or with Buddha and the Eightfold Ways, talking about right speech, right living, livelihood, that sort of thing, right action? Is it a matter of trying to achieve both in some sort of harmony?
The Vairagya means the Vigata Raga iti Vairagya. Without raga, passion or attachment. To become Vairagya, to become detached. This is considered to be the byproduct of bhakti. It's not something that you have to endeavor for, but something which comes naturally when bhakti appears. But until the energy of bhakti appears in the heart, it's good to stabilize your life with all the right behaviors and everything. And that's essentially what morality and religion is about. Morality, ethics, these things, that's not really spirituality, but it's a stabilization of your life. And in that stable atmosphere, then you can practice bhakti. So, in the Bhagavad Purana, there it is said, Kikateshu Bhavishyati. So Vyasadeva is writing the Bhagavad Purana 5,000 years ago. He said that in the future, a person will appear called Buddha. As the son of his mother's name will be Anjana, and he will appear in Gaya. And so 1,500 years after Bhagavatam was compiled, Buddha appeared. And this is in a description of a list of incarnations of God. And so this is a very wonderful thing, that Krishna is so kind and so merciful. Even those who are not interested in God, He is interested in them. Even those who are not interested in bhakti, He wants to help them. So Krishna Himself incarnates in so many forms. They're called avatars. Ram, Sita Ram, Lakshmi Nrsimha, Parashuram, Varaha, Kurma, Matsya. So many avatars are described. Especially 10, the Das avatars, the 10 avatars are famous in India. Srimad Bhagavatam describes 24. And then goes on to say that in different ages there are many others as well. So Buddha is included in one of the avatars of Vishnu. Keshavadrita Buddha Sharira Jaya. And Buddha comes and he speaks about the right lives, the sattvic lifestyle, especially ahimsa. Ahimsa means non-violence. And in the yams and niyams, ahimsa is the first yam. And Patanjali and Vyas, they go on to say that all the yams and niyams of yoga are actually the sub-limbs. They're the angas or the limbs of ahimsa. Ahimsa is that non-violence is everything. But ahimsa literally means ahimsa. Himsa is envy. To be without envy. See, violence is a product of envy of another being. You see, so ahimsa literally means non-enviousness. And that is like a negative definition of bhakti. It's the other side. Bhakti means love. Where the envy and love are the opposite of each other. And so the philosophy of ahimsa, which is there spoken of by Patanjali as a moralistic foundation for yoga, and the ahimsa spoken by Buddha is really the via negativa, the negative way of describing devotion, bhakti, for those who have no inclination towards devotion. And so those persons, they take up the philosophy, the life of ahimsa, non-violence, and right means of livelihood and so on, all of these things. And in order to seek inspiration in that, they keep a statue of Buddha and they offer some incense and flowers. And now what are they doing? Bhakti, because Buddha is an incarnation of Krishna. And so in this way, for those who have no inclination towards a personal God, who have no inclination towards bhakti and devotion as a path, they become tricked by God himself into doing all the things they're not interested in. But because bhakti works even without your knowledge, it begins to digest the subtle body, and they gradually make advancement. Like this. So the Greek word charis, from which charisma, which is derived from Krishna, charis means power and grace. Two things. Power and grace, mercy.
But how would that gross body get digested? Then we can't exist. That's what
No, the gross body will not be digested. The subtle body will bite. The subtle body is the foundation of the gross body. You see? If a person is having a nervous breakdown, you can see it in their face. And you have a friend. Let's say you have a friend, you went to college with them, and they're very bright and happy. Then, 20 years later, you meet, and they're in the middle of a nervous breakdown. When you see them, you can see. Because the gross body develops on the basis of the subtle body.
Sukshma Sharira affects the Stula Sharira.
Yeah, that's the chain of cause and effect.
Yeah, okay.
That's the chase. Follow the chain of cause and effect. Because as your subtle body is, when you die, that means that the soul, along with the pran and the subtle body, leaves a gross body and enters into another body somewhere. But the soul will enter into a body which exactly corresponds to the state of the gunas in the subtle body at the time of death. So if in this life, let's say you're very rajasic, you die in a rajasic condition, then you'll take birth again as a human being, a very rajasic human being. If you'll die in a tamasic state, you're very angry and upset, and then you'll go down and you'll take a birth in a lower species. If you die in a sattvic state, you'll go up to a higher planet and be born amongst the angels, if you like. They're called the Gandharvas, Kinnaras and so on. There are different planets. In the Gayatri mantra, Om Bhur Bhuvaha Swaha. Like Bhur is this earth, Bhuvaha is the next level up, Swaha is the next level. So there's 7 planetary systems above the earth. So if you're sattvic, you go up. If you're rajasic, you're back here again on earth. If you're tamasic, you'll go down. Like this. So the subtle body, the body that you have now, is a reflection of the state of your mind that you had when you gave up your last body, physical body. You see?
The overall state, not the momentary state.
It's the momentary state. However, the momentary state will be like the essence of your activities throughout that life. Many people say, who had a near-death experience, they say, my whole life flashed before me. And so it's like that. All the sanskars, all the impressions of everything you've done will combine together to make your consciousness at that last moment.
But if you're in a war, for example, and you're angry because you've just been shot or whatever, you might be a peaceful man. But in that moment you're not, because you've just been shot. So the subtle body
depends where you've been shot. See, if you've been shot in the stomach, it might take some time for you to die, and while you're lying there, all your life will come and flash before your eyes. If you're shot in the head, then you won't have a lot of time to think. But even though medically, as soon as the bullet enters your brain, that's it, you can't talk anymore. But that just means that you can't communicate with the external world anymore. It's like your body's a radio, and someone's talking to you through the radio. So if you smash the radio, that person can't talk anymore, but that person still fully exists. So the moment that bullet goes through your head, you can't communicate anymore, but your subtle body and all the impressions are still there, and they'll rush into your mind. And the soul, what actually happens is that the senses which were spread out throughout the body by the pran, they all become withdrawn. And at that time you realize that you're a spiritual atom situated in the region of the heart. And then from the heart there are 100 nadis which lead in all directions. And one of them will become illuminated, and the soul will leave the body through one of those nadis, one of those channels. That's why also people with near-death experiences, they say, oh, I died and I saw a tunnel of light and I was going down the tunnel, but then I came back. Because that's when the senses become withdrawn into the heart and one experiences then I'm a soul. And then you have to leave this body through one of the 101 channels in the heart. And if you go out of any of the channels in the downward direction, then you go down and up. If you go through the Sushumna Nadi, that is the central channel, the Sushumna Nadi that goes to the Sahasrara Chakra, then the soul will go on the route out of this world.
Should you go through Sahasrara? Shouldn't you go through here?
No,
Ajna?
you go through through Sahasrara and then the Brahmarandra. There's the Sushumna Nadi will go up to the Brahmarandra, and there's a subtle hole in the top of the head, and the pran will force the soul through the Brahmarandra, and that person will be liberated.
But Taoists say you should go through Ajna. Through this.
That's their causal closure.
Oh.
Even you know, after the Agya Chakra, there's another chakra.
Yeah, I know. That's why I was wondering when they said that. I thought,
That's what they do. That's it. That's where they stop.
That's it.
But there's another chakra. You know.
I was thinking
Sahasrara.
that. I was thinking that.
Actually, the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita describes what happens to the yogi when he leaves through the Sahasrara Chakra and the route that he takes out of the material. Because the soul has come out of the covering of the physical body, but it hasn't gone out of the covering of the universe. The universe also has coverings of elements as well.
Sure.
So it has to take a particular route. So that's described at the end of the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita.
Oh, I've got all those questions.
What you just said is written in here. Of
Yeah.
concentrating between the eyebrows.
Aha, yes. That's for meditation on the syllable Om.
Oh, for when your soul leaves the body, it says.
But then, when you receive
It's
Tao,
correct.
that's what
It's
they
correct,
say.
but the soul, the soul is in the heart, and by concentrating there, it will be uplifted, and then from there it will go to Sahasrara, and then from the Brahmarandra. This is chapter 7. It says, one who at the moment of leaving from the body fixes his consciousness between the eyebrows and firmly focuses his mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead with loving devotion will assuredly directly achieve the transcendental abode. This is chapter 8. As I mentioned, chapter 8. So,
But it seems a little bit confusing that they say definitely you have to leave the body with the right spot. And then I couldn't.
this is also, this chapter 8, Krishna is describing about two types of practitioners. The yogis who want liberation and those who want to come back and enjoy certain things. And so, and also this is called Krampanta, the sequential path. Because the yogis, they raise their Atma on the pran up to the Agya Chakra, and then they fix their consciousness fully on Vishnu, and then they'll go up to the Sahasrara Chakra, and then the soul will leave through Brahmarandra. And then they go through a route, and Krishna describes the route by which they go. But then the conclusion of the 8th chapter, Vedeshu Yaggeshu Tapasu Chaiva Punya Phalam Pratistam. Here, these are the last two verses. Thus, as per the Vedic knowledge, there are two ways of passing from this world. One, by leaving at the time of light, one does not return. But if one leaves during the night, he is destined to return. but don't be bewildered by such timings, and remain always fixed in devotion to me. See, the yogis who are leaving, those who leave when the sun is in the northern course, then they get liberation from this world. And those who leave when the sun is in the southern course, then they come back and they experience whatever they desire at that time. So Krishna gives the conclusion, don't be bewildered by such timings, and remain fixed in devotion to me. Because one who follows the path of bhakti is never deprived of the results attained by studying the Vedas, performing sacrifices, austerities, performing charity, good karmas, and so on. Simply by the performance of bhakti, one attains the results of all these paths together, and ultimately he comes to my supreme planet. So that's the conclusion. But just for completeness, so that everyone can understand, Krishna describes what the different options are, and then compares them to pure bhakti. So when a person does pure bhakti, they don't see the yoga process which is mentioned here. It's yoga mixed with bhakti. Ashtanga yoga already has elements of bhakti, but it's very predominated by bhakti here. And that yogi does a mechanical process to raise the Atma and so on, and then travel. He takes a particular route out of the universe. For those who are doing pure bhakti, there's no mechanism involved, because while they're in this life, already in their meditation, they have perception of the transcendental realm, and they become situated in their spiritual body. So what happens for such devotees? They don't know anything about death. Death is not a thing that they do. So the yogi, he leaves by his will. He picks the right time, and then he controls his pran, and the pran is taking the Atma up, and he leaves through the Brahmarandra. So the yogi is actually doing it. The devotee, he thinks, I'm here because God wants me to be here. I'll be here as long as he wants me to be here, and I'll leave when he wants me to serve him in another place. So he's not concerned with those things. And generally what happens is, as the devotee gets older, and every day he's meditating and goes into trance, and in trance he experiences a spiritual body and serving Krishna in the spiritual world. And one day he goes into trance, and he's serving there, and then the body dies, and he doesn't even know.
So you've got no control which way you went out, which way you
So
left.
You won't even know. You won't know anything.
the yogi still would have ego to say, okay, now I'm going.
Yes, there's a certain element of ego there.
Must be.
There's an element, and they slowly become free from that. The step-by-step path is there. Basically, the layers of the onion are coming off one by one as they go through the step-by-step path. But the devotional path, all the subtle body is already digested. Devotee is already he's already there. He's here and already there at the same time. And every day he goes in trance and comes back. The day he goes in trance and doesn't come back, everyone says he's dead. But he's not dead. That's called Mahasamadhi.
Mahasamadhi.
Actually, yesterday was the anniversary of the Mahasamadhi of my Guru. 3 years before, on that day, he went into Mahasamadhi. And so when the devotee so-called dies, he's not buried or like that, but rather when the Guru, he goes into Samadhi and never comes out, then the disciples, they put his japamala, his bead bag, and they put him in a sitting posture like this, and they make a hole in the ground, and then they put salt, and they sit the Guru sitting like this in meditation very blissfully. Then they cover with salt, and then they make a little monument on the top. So it's considered that the spiritual master, he's not dead, but he's in the great Samadhi. And so the students, the disciples, and anyone, they can come to that place, to the Samadhi, and bow down and pray and receive guidance and internal instruction, depending on the degree of their purity. If someone's heart is not particularly pure, they'll not have a very strong or direct communication, but it's still effective, because what will happen is, if they'll pray for guidance, then the blessing will come, and internally, subconsciously, their destiny will lead them to a Guru, to a spiritual master who's here now, and who can speak to them directly in a language they can understand. So prayers never go unanswered.
Oh, thank
You can
you for
pray.
for existing.
I am an ordinary person, but in my life I was fortunate enough to meet a very qualified guru.
Yeah.
And he adopted me like his child and said, stay with me. Learn Hindi, learn Sanskrit, learn Bengali. Study this book. Oh, I am writing this. Translate it. And took me everywhere. And gave me mantra. So chant this mantra. And you will go to the spiritual world. And somehow or other, I believed it. I don't know why. And I followed it. Now I don't believe anything. Then I believed, but now I don't believe anything. Belief is for blind people. Only blind people can have a discussion whether or not the sun exists. The question of faith or no faith, this is a discussion for blind people. So now I have no faith at all.
You're talking about knowing rather than faith.
It's experiencing, I suppose. Maybe what we say.
Everything he told, it became true. Now, so I feel very grateful. And eternally I'm servant of my spiritual master. I am serving him now. Because he wants and Krishna wants that all the souls everywhere, they'll find the eternal happiness they're looking for. So what I have learned, I'm repeating as a service. So I'm very grateful to you. That's why before speaking, I bow down to everyone. Because you give me the chance to serve my master and to serve Krishna by listening. So I guess the prasadam should be ready. So we'll sing a little kirtan just to conclude. Hope you all have a good appetite. Did you cook something?
Dessert.
Oh. Can the harmonium player be replaced by someone who's slightly less musically talented?
Yeah, right.
Probably me.
But not much.
At least.
This is a lovely Bhagavad Gita, very small, pocket size.
It's sort of my level.
It's great. Just the verses.
Yeah.
They sent me back to be musical. They're coming. It's coming.
Shall we sing something very simple or something a bit more exotic? It's Maha Mantra, but it's in different ways.
We'll follow you.
Okay, we'll do something very simple. Let's see. We're in E.
E.
So I don't want you to sing from the throat. Material sound comes from the throat, but spiritual sound comes from the heart. In fact, even the material sound, when you speak, it should start as a thought and then come out of the mouth, right? So people say, make sure that your brain is engaged before you put your mouth in gear. So we think. And it's always true actually, in all circumstances, when someone is talking, it's like an impulse that comes on the platform of the mind. And it comes from the mind and then it comes through the fire, the chakra of fire. That is the Manipur chakra, fire there. And that fire rises and mixes with the air and then it comes out to the Vishuddha chakra and the sound comes out here. So be aware that the sound is starting from the mind, but we want to go deeper, beyond your mind, beyond your conscious mind, beyond your subconscious mind and all the sanskars, the impressions of this life and previous lives also, which are dictating all behavior. Beyond that, from a very deep space, from your soul, this mantra should come. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Nitai Gaur Sitanath Premanande Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So uplifting to have
Shut
you.
my eyes and then I was
So
going to
uplifting to be in your presence.
I'm so happy to be here
Yeah,
too as
I
well.
should've- I should have.
I was thinking about you all.
Kept doing it.
Yeah,
Because when
I'm
I'm
not
doing,
trying to-
listening,
Yeah.
looking, it's all too much. I just,
Yeah, I know. So I had to put them down. I should have closed my eyes and just gone with the beat. Yeah.
Yeah.
to rescan your music.
Different being back here from dusty India.
Yes, it's definitely different.
Quite different.
I had to go to the mall today to get some photos for my application to extend my Indian visa. And yeah, and I looked around and thought, oh,
Different
it's not
world.
Vrindavan.
Is it cold for you?
Here?
Yeah.
Actually, it's colder in Vrindavan right
Oh.
now, and especially in the temples and everything. Everything's made of stone, so there's no central heating, right? So when you're cold, you're cold.
Right.
So it's in Vrindavan. It's a little cold now,
Right.
and it gets misty, very misty.
Of course, because this is about the time you were there last.
Yeah, yeah. So it'll be like that for probably another 4 weeks, and then the mist will clear and it will start to get warm again.
Right.
So not a bad time to come here.
Yeah.
But it's very special to be in the holy places, to visit these places. They have a power, and also there are saints. Saints are living there, so it's very relishable for me
Right.
to meet with them and speak with them in Sanskrit and discuss so many profound, marvelous things.
How long did it take you to learn Sanskrit?
I'm still learning after 25 years. You never come to the end of it, but
No,
if you want to pick up Bhagavad Gita and read Bhagavad
Yeah.
Gita, yes, I can teach you in about. You're very smart, so you can easily learn in about. To read Bhagavad Gita in 6 months. If you really throw yourself into it for 6 months, you'll be able to
Decipher.
Yeah, you'll be able to decipher the verses about it. You'll look at it and it will be talking to you in the language that you understand. Yeah. The Sanskrit of Bhagavad Gita is not particularly complicated, but 6 months, very intensive.
Is it the English version of Sanskrit we're talking about, the original Indian?
Yeah, directly. Read the Sanskrit in the script.
As
In-
it is.
in Devanagari.
The Bhagavad Gita as it is. Is that what it's called?
Hmm?
The,
Well, to read, I mean, I'll show you the Devanagari. I mean, to read that, if you just have those parts,
That's right.
the squiggles, yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
squiggles,
the squiggle.
oh, you
The
mean
hieroglyphics.
you mean he could learn to read that?
Yes, yes.
Of course. Yeah.
Oh my golly!
I'll put a challenge to you, Steve. Do it in 3.
Um,
Yeah.
3 is pushing. 6 is really pushing it. You need like
Proper teacher.
you need 3 years intensive to really know. But I'm saying in 6 months you'll be able to look at that and say what it says and decipher it. You know, you say, oh, okay, here's the nouns, here are the verbs, and so it's saying this.
Yeah.
You know, not that you can just read it and then immediately you have the tools to be able to decipher it.
Not many night classes in Sanskrit around here though.
Did you study Latin or Greek or any language like that?
Tiny bit of German way back. But
Then if you have some background in Latin or Greek, then it's good, because the structures of the language, you know, you have 8 cases: the nominative, accusative, instrumental, dative, ablative, genitive, vocative, and locative. So if you know Latin and Greek, you already understand the structures of grammar and all the cases and so on. So if you already have that background, then it's much easier.
Yeah.
When I was at school, I studied Latin, and after that ancient Greek also. So when I came to Sanskrit, it was like the templates were already there. I just had to change the words and stick them in the same. So, of course, there are many grammatical aspects which are more developed and refined than Latin and Greek as well. In Sanskrit, there are many more. But just to get you going, the basics are there in the classical languages.
Annie Beeson from the Theosophical Society, she's English, she learned Sanskrit, and her translation, I've got some translations of Bhagavad Gita, very beautiful. But they're all slightly different, aren't they, depending who's translating it?
There will be.
Subtle words.
Yeah, because Sanskrit itself is so succinct and so intense, and it's such a there's nothing like it. You can literally write one small verse of poetry that has, 61 different meanings. And it's not ambiguous. All those meanings are. It's not confusing. All those meanings are actually there.
And
so it's a language, because language is an expression of our consciousness. We think in language. I think it was probably Edmund Husserl who proposed that we think in language, and that's why children at first they can't speak so well, because they haven't developed a thinking capacity, and so the power to think and the power to speak grows together. So the more language becomes simple and simplified, that's a reflection that the thoughts are more simple and rudimentary and not so deep. And so in the cultures where the thinking capacity is more highly developed, the language is much more highly developed too. And you'll see that now there's a devolution of language. As each generation goes on now, there's a devolution of language, and now people just write to each other in emoticons. Right? And OMG and LOL.
That's it.
And like that, as the language just gradually degrades, and that's a sign that the consciousness is also going down. Kali Yuga is going down. It's like in the Theosophical Society, the writings of Madame Blavatsky. How literate she is, how eloquent.
Yes, and she's Russian, so she.
And it's not even her first language.
Russian, French, and then English.
So then you compare that to the state of education system today. Even if you look at an examination paper for an 11-year-old in say 1890, then the degree students at university today would be hard passed to press that exam.
Yes, possibly.
Really. And so we see that language is devolving. That the devolution of language is the outer expression of the devolution also of consciousness.
Sad,
It's a bit scary when you think how quickly it's happening.
Well, it's all becoming.
It's Kali Yuga.
It's all becoming.
It's part
English.
of the script.
Yeah.
It's the winter. In winter all the leaves go brown and fall off the tree. So we're in that astrological period of the planet. Is Kali Yuga? Is it?
Hundreds of years now, or hundreds of thousands of years now.
Are we just 5,000 years into it?
It started on Wednesday afternoon on February the 17th. So it was 5,000. There is an exact calculation. I have
Krishna's
it written.
death, wasn't it?
Yeah, when Krishna, the moment he left the planet, then the Kali Yuga began.
Yeah, I wondered if there was some correlation between them.
Yeah, and it was about 5,100 and something years ago. And the whole Kali Yuga, the cycle is 432,000 years. So we're 5,000 into it, so another
And it's just going to get worse.
427,000. It gets worse and worse. Hopefully none of you will be around to see it. We have to get you all to Goloka Vrindavan, to the spiritual world,
That's right.
before it gets
We've
too
got to hop
late.
off this wheel of rebirth before it
Yeah.
gets worse.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine how bad
No,
it
but
can
it's-
get.
But, well,
Oh,
the
no, no.
Atlantean days
Just
it
go
was
to I don't know, Somalia or something right now, or
It's
and,
awful.
go to
Sudan.
Syria right now.
Syria.
Go to India. You just go to India right now. It looks like the day after a nuclear war.
Yeah.
And that's in the developed places. So it's very, very comfortable
Yeah.
here compared to so many places in the
But
world.
They do say it's in the tough times is all the learning happens, because if we all, in the fields and having a great time, where would the learning come from? Where
That's
would
why it says
the
that
change happen?
This Earth planet is the best planet for practicing spiritual life, because on the lower planes there's more suffering. There's too much suffering that you can't think about it, and in the higher planes there's too much enjoyment that you can't think. Both of it. So in this Earth planet there's a balance. You kind of see both heaven and hell. A taste of both here. So you have more perspective, and so it's a human birth on the Earth planet is a very fortunate birth, and if it's utilized properly, then all perfection can come.
So, birth on the Earth planet's no accident.
It comes by karma. It comes by karma.
I often wonder why there's so many people around that they never think about why they're here. It's almost like a wasted life. They just
Yeah. Well, some souls are on their way up. They've come from animal birth and they're coming into human life for the first time.
Right.
And so they're still kind of discovering what it's like to have opposing thumbs.
Right.
There's so many things you can do now that you couldn't do before, and so they're in a stage of discovery. You have to see, just like a child is playing with Lego or whatever it is when they're 2 years old, and so some souls there's some souls they're like in the childhood of their development. So we don't look down on them or anything. It's like that's where they are.
Right.
And they're going to learn something and they're going on. But you did that so many lifetimes before. You're in a higher class. They'll get there, also. So some souls are coming up like that, and some are coming down from the heavenly sphere. Because if you do good karma, you'll go up. Om Bhu Bhuva Swaha. But then, if you don't continue spiritual practices there, you just enjoy. Then you exhaust your good karma, and then you'll come down. So when a person comes down to that plane, down from that plane, where the arts and the sciences and culture and everything is developed to a much finer degree, when they come down here with the sanskars, the subconscious sanskars of those arts, and then they don't know where it's coming from, but they just compose the Fifth Symphony. Yeah, they become like Mozart, Beethoven, all these like brilliant and talented people. They've come with the impressions of the arts from a higher realm, and when they exhausted their good karma, they came here and they're just naturally better than everyone else. And you can't fake that. You can't fake that kind of. You either have it in your subconscious sanskars from the past experience, or you don't.
The answer not to have bad karma, obviously, but not to have good karma.
It's to have a
either,
neutral, isn't it?
Because good karma will tie you to.
Good karma will take you up there, and you'll be enjoying in the Swarga Lok with the Gandharvas and Apsaras, and I don't even want to tell you what happens there, because right now you don't want it, because you don't know about it. If you hear about it, then you might want. You can't want what you don't know.
Then we'll be desiring. Need desirelessness.
So yeah.
It's the pure bhakti that you're talking about, that pureness, which is sort of.
Well, the thing is, it's all about cause and effect. If you do something to get something, then
it's nothing.
you do something to get something. In other words, you're the cause of your activity, then you have to take the effect of your activity.
Forget it then.
So what is bhakti? No one can be without activity.
No.
Everyone has to act. It's impossible to not act. By our nature we're forced to act.
Inaction is action.
Yeah.
So it's your motivation for you.
Yes, it's your motivation. So if you do something for yourself, you're the cause, so the effect comes to you. If you do something for someone else, you're still the cause, because you're subtly trying to enjoy what it's like to help others. But you're not really helping them. because they have their karma, and you're becoming an instrument to their karma. You see? So in religions, obviously they exhort us to help others, but it's completely misunderstood. You don't help others to help others, it's to help you. Because God is in the heart of everyone, but we're ignorant of that. And so compassion and helping others, which is prescribed by religions, is not to help them. Because karma is, Jesus said, as you sow, so shall you reap. So everyone gets the karma that they've done. But when you consciously sacrifice the selfish interest for the sake of helping others, but with the consciousness that God is in the heart of each person, it uplifts your consciousness, because you're becoming free from duality. You're becoming free from the himsa, the envy, which is the opposite of love, you see. So the welfare work and doing good to others, which is recommended by religions, it's not about helping others. It's to purify your consciousness of envy and ego and see the presence of God everywhere. And this is why Jesus said that when you give in charity, do it so secretly that your right hand doesn't know what your left hand is doing. So that you understand that charity is not something that you do so that you can feel the happiness of seeing someone else being helped, or the prestige of someone knowing that you helped someone, or anything. It's to purify you. So do it secretly that no one knows. It's to benefit you. These are some of the rahasya, the mysteries of religious life. Many people practice religious things without understanding the profound significance of it.
Well, they've lost a lot of it, haven't they? The significance of some of the Christian scriptures,
Yes.
they lost them long ago.
Without a living teacher, the scripture, no one can understand the scriptures. The living teacher gives a context to that, because everything depends on context. William Blake said, both read the Bible day and night, but one sees black and one sees white. So we're discussing words on a page that can mean so many things. So it's the presence of the living spiritual master who gives us a practice, and then this practice becomes the context which brings out the actual meaning of the text. So? I think your recorder's probably still there.